Hello, welcome to today's Q&A. Today we're talking with Samantha from Next Fertility Nordic, who is going to talk to us about her personal experience of freezing her eggs. Hello, Samantha. Thank you so much for volunteering to share your personal journey.
Yeah, it's nice to speak with you again. Thank you.
Samantha, tell me, when did you start thinking about freezing your eggs?
So I first started thinking about it a few years ago when I sort of began my career in embryology. And of course, in the day-to-day procedures, it's probably at the back of your mind, this field. But it wasn't really until recently that I really considered it seriously. I think a lot of it came from seeing the procedure myself and being really comfortable with the setup where I'm currently at. And that sort of encouraged me more to really proceed with it. I had done my AMH test a few years ago, and I started to get in habit of repeating that, once a year, just to see how it was fluctuating with things like contraception and age. And it was really after that I had, a few ultrasound scans. And then I just said that I'm gonna give it a go and started to make a treatment plan. So it has been on my mind for some time, but really, I decided to just go for it.
Do you think it's because you're, of course, working in a fertility clinic and you're more aware that there is a natural fertility decline in women, or maybe also the pressure from society as well for women to have it all, to have the career, to have the babies? Do you feel that as well?
Yeah, I definitely feel, being around women who struggle to get pregnant is sort of motivation to take the steps a bit earlier in my case and do a sort of preemptive um, try in case I should ever run into any problems further down the line. But yeah, I think there is pressure, with for young women. And I think there is just not the awareness out there, um, for young women that, everyone says, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to have, or a baby. And when I'm this age, I want to have a baby. And fortunately for everyone, that doesn't happen. And I think it's important not to just assume that, it's going to be smooth sailing for everyone. And I wanted to just take those precautions a bit earlier on. Just whilst I use the opportunity that I know a lot about, fertility, and I didn't want to waste that opportunity. So, yeah.
And you mentioned that you were monitoring your AMH and then you did the scan. Did those results scare you, or were you anxious every time you did the test?
I think, yeah, the first few times the reserve was a little bit lower than I suppose normal for my age category. And that was probably one of the deciding factors that encouraged me to continue with fertility preservation or social egg freezing. Um, in cases where someone might have a higher reserve, maybe the pressure is off then because they have, let's say, more time and more reserve. So that was definitely one of the factors that pushed me to take the eggs out at this stage. Yeah.
And so I imagine when you've made the decision, then you had to go for a gynecology appointment. Was that the next step?
Yeah, so that's just a general, even if you don't proceed with the cycle, it's still good to get a gynecologist checkup anyway. You can check your hormones, you can have an ultrasound scan, and that can flag maybe something that is an issue and that you didn't really realize before. So yeah, general scans. They can also see if you're having cysts growing on your ovaries. That happened a couple of times with me, which meant we had to delay the procedure because you couldn't have the stimulation drugs whilst the cyst was still there. But then finally, we had a treatment plan, and as soon as we had the ready to start with the pre-planned cycle. Yeah.
And tell me a bit about that part which is very similar to IVF, so the stimulation. How did it go for you? Because you're usually on the other side,
Yeah, it was.
at the clinic. How did it feel to be the one doing the drugs and stimulating your ovary?
It was very flexible, and but obviously some of it was also done at home, so I had to study how to use the proper administration of the pen, and then the other part was just tablets. So probably the hardest part was just trying to inject into my stomach for the first time. Obviously, it's nothing that I've ever done before. That was a little bit worrisome, but as soon as I tried it the first time, I realized there was really nothing to worry about. But yes, it's interesting to go through it myself. Now I kind of see the whole process, not just the lab side. I see also how the start works. And then obviously coming into the procedure room, being on the other side of the door, felt strange, but it was all very comfortable for me because obviously I know everyone, and that was a very, that not everyone gets to experience, but for me, I felt very comfortable. Yeah.
So you had to do the stimulation for how long?
I did in total nine days of injections. Then I took the trigger shot, and then 36 hours later, I was scheduled for my procedure. So just came in, took the day off work, and stayed in the recovery side whilst my colleagues were treating me. So yeah.
Was it done with some sedatives or anesthetic?
Yes, it was done with sedation here. So I know compared to some other clinics, patients' experience varies, but here it was completely smooth sailing and very effective and short. There was no side effects or long recovery time, so that really helped.
And were you curious to know how many eggs they were able to collect?
Yeah, I mean, I was updated as and when the stages occurred after the pickup, and then after the stripping, how many are mature and then to be frozen. So I was updated by the time that I was leaving to see that I had a fair amount of mature eggs that looked good. So I was happy with that result.
That's really good. So now you have a good amount of eggs that are frozen. And how long can your eggs be frozen for before you think about, maybe using them if you need it in the future?
So technically, because they are gametes, they can be stored indefinitely here. Okay. It's really up to the person to decide how long they want to keep them in storage. Obviously, there is a storage fee for that period. But until I need to use them or I decide I don't need to use them, I can eventually end that storage contract if I choose to.
That's really good. So do you think that the plan in the future is to try naturally, of course, and that is just an insurance that you have there should you need it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be just a backup plan. I know that I have younger eggs stored, and then we'll see what happens in the future. But I'm completely open to the fact that if I have to go through an IVF cycle, either with fresh eggs or using the frozen eggs, then I'm fully prepared to do so. I know that it is quite common, and so I'm not afraid to have to try, with artificial methods.
And how did your friends or your family, maybe even the ones who are not so familiar with fertility treatment, how did they react to your decision to freeze your eggs?
Yeah, everyone is being supportive and they're interested in it. I think some people have the idea and thoughts, perhaps some of my friends or colleagues, but they don't actually, I guess they feel maybe they don't need to because, they don't know what will happen. But really this was something that I recommend, to other people my age. And I encourage them to, even just get a fertility assessment, as the starting point. That can just help in so many partner as well. Even just doing this kind of health check, before you have to think about it, can really help steer the direction of the future in terms of so I think I hope more companies will also be supportive of younger employees in the future. I think that will definitely help take the pressure off, enhance information that's available, and also sort of support those women that may do have trouble conceiving as well.
Samantha, that's such a positive story. And, thank you so much for sharing your experience, because it can really help other people who are not so familiar with fertility care to maybe take that step. Because we're always, always waiting about the right job, the right partner, the right time to make the decision. So freezing our eggs maybe gives us a bit more flexibility and a bit more time to make those decisions.